there's lots more oil being found. I'm actually on your side on the abiotic oil thing. I think the Earth's core, it's always churning, it's grinding, it's basically generating all kinds of hydrogen, helium, carbon dioxide gases that are venting to the surface, and as those gases come to the surface, they combine with carbon, you get hydrocarbons. You bake them into long chains, you get petroleum. And that's why they're finding this stuff at depths far below sedimentary deposits, in rock that's 18,000 feet deep and more. That didn't get there from dinosaurs.
No, especially also the oil that they would find on the bed of the ocean floor, deep within that. I mean, my gosh, how did that get there?
Right. See, I think the Earth's crust is loaded with hydrocarbons. What you had with this price run up, there's been a resurgence of drilling. We've been finding a lot more of this stuff. Now, here's a prediction I have. If I'm right, and we're basically moving into another low-price scenario here, what you're going to see is a spate of new oil discovery announcements. Mm-hmm. You're going to see reserve revisions, companies reporting, oh yeah, we got a lot more there than we thought.
Yeah.
And you're going to see the oil majors, who have been scrimping on the capital spending for the last 10 years, you're going to see them now move to a different posture where they're going to be spending much more of their cash flow, putting it back in the ground. They're going to keep their production up and probably increase it. And in fact, the market has risen a bit on these hopes that OPEC is going to cut production. No, what happens in times like this, OPEC is prone to cheating. They love to cheat, and that's what happened in the 80s. That's partly when the Saudis started producing again. All of OPEC, they just went wild cheating. And you're probably going to see that again because all these producing governments, they're desperate for cash. They'll have to produce more crude.
Absolutely. And they may not tell us they're doing it, but they will.
Yeah, and demand is falling. U.S. gasoline consumption is down like 4% from a year ago and last week.
Yeah. And you know what's disappointing to the automobile industry, and it's got to be, my father worked for his whole lifetime at Ford in Detroit. The prices are so low now, you would think automobile sales would be going through the roof, and they're plummeting by 30 or 40, 50%.
Right. Well, when you go through a price shock and market shock like we've had, this takes a long time to get out of people's mind. I mean, we're all just...
People are afraid of spending money.
Exactly, right. Now, here's an interesting thing. What you're also going to see is yet another round of draconian CAFE standard increases, corporate average fuel economy increase. The government is going to mandate much better efficiency from the automakers. Again, this is the same thing we did back in the 80s, the mid-80s, after prices had tanked, after the horse had left the barn. That's when we came in with these more fuel economy standards, which further drove down U.S. oil consumption. In the 80s, U.S. oil consumption fell from 20 million barrels a day to 16 million barrels a day, and it didn't recover for 20 years. I think you're going to see the same kind of thing happening where these are the levers we can pull. We can put more oil on the market. We can decrease demand. There's a bunch of things that the government can do with even kind of subtle policy and regulatory moves that are going to could dramatically change the whole supply-demand picture on crude oil. Then we get to the NYMEX, which is another whole story, and I'll go into that. That's very complex.
Okay.
That's the key.
Hey, give out your toll-free number again for you.
It's 1-800-556-2012. And there's also a website if you want to go read some more about this.
2012? How did you pick that number?
Coincidence. I don't know. Fate. Karma. It was not my decision. And
that's 1-800, not one of those other numbers. 1-800, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. There's also a website. It's called www.theoilcard.com. And there's some more stuff there. So.
Okay, great. Okay, now let's get back to you're talking about the futures exchange. And
yeah.
How do they manipulate that?
Okay. Now, the key thing about this price run-up over the last year or so, people have said, oh, well, it was due to speculators. Well, yes and no, because actually what happened was there was a flood of money into the futures exchange, the commodity futures in particular, and the crude futures contract in particular. Now, it wasn't really speculative money. It wasn't even so much hedge funds and that kind of stuff. It was really pension money, managed money, fiduciary managed money that should never have gone into commodity futures to begin with. But at the behest of Goldman Sachs and the other big Wall Street houses, they basically went to the pension funds and said, oh, look, we've got a risk-free way for you to invest your money in commodities. The price will only go up. Buy these commodity index investments, then we'll put that money to work in the futures market so that you'll get these returns. And and I think this is where the government was able to have a hand in this, because I think with just a few phone calls to a few large government-affiliated pension funds like CalPERS, Hermes in the UK, they plopped billions of dollars.
How about AIG? Were they involved in any of this?
Well, AIG...
Because they bailed them out really fast. There was something going on there.
AIG is an interesting story in itself in another regard. And I'll come back to that.
Come back to that, okay.
They don't really play in the NYMEX futures so much. But, you see, the only way this could happen is if the Commodity Futures Trading Commission basically suspended what are called position limits on the big banks. Position limits are designed to prevent speculators from grabbing control of the market. It says it limits the amount of money you can put in on a speculative basis into these actually rather small markets like the crude market. What they did for the Wall Street banks that were taking in this pension money, turning it into contracts on the futures exchange, they basically suspended position limits so that the so-called, they're called swap desks on these big banks, they were able to pour unlimited amounts of money into this market. It was like a fire hose. It was a torrent of money flowing into these markets that completely... And all of it was on the buy side. They were all buying crude futures, and they overwhelmed the sellers. So and anybody who was a seller during this run-up got slaughtered. The so-called shorts, the sellers.
Oh, sure. Wiped out?
Yeah. So you basically decimated the shorts. You overwhelmed them with buying. The market just ran up. It could have gone to $200 a barrel. It could have gone to $300 a barrel, as Boone Pickens was predicting. But then I think the Russians just kind of, they changed their game plan, and I think we just threw the lever the other way. And since then, there's been a massive outrush of the same money out of these commodity index plays. And so the figure it had gotten up to, it gone from like nothing to like $260 billion worth of investment in a period of a couple of years. Now it's back down to under $100 billion and kind of bumping along there. But you can see that basically it's like the Mississippi River. You just dig a channel there and you channel part of that river into a swamp. Mississippi River. You just dig a channel there and you channel part of that river into a swamp somewhere and you can flood the swamp. Well, that's sort of what we did. I mean, it's like no heavy lifting at all for the government with just a kind of a deft regulatory decision, an obscure change in the regulation somewhere. You can channel a large amount of money into a market like crude and you can do all kinds of stuff there, damage.
Truly remarkable, James, what they do and the ability and how they manipulate. And
yeah.
They must be sitting in these little tiny corner offices. Well, I guess they're not little and tiny, are they? They're probably huge, but they're sitting down there just deciding the fate of the world.
Well, I think that, yeah, in effect. And, there's an interesting quote in the book. I pulled that up from a magazine article where basically somebody in the Bush administration, some journalist was talking to him, but what about this, what about that? And this guy just stopped him short and says, look, the trouble with all you guys in the press is that you're reality-based. You look at what's going on and you try to figure it out. Well, we're so far down the road, we create our own reality. We're the actors. We make things happen, and all you can do is sit back and try to figure it out. By the time you do, we're way down the road in the next few.
James, is like playing chess with the late Bobby Fischer. He was 60 moves ahead of us.
Right.
We'll be back in a moment.